Hello, my name is Mr. Cook. This is Public Speaking, and today we're going to do a very brief lesson on how to create that successful book report. Yeah, the dreaded oral book report that nobody likes to give and everybody gets nervous about. It's one of the first things about basic public speaking, one of the first exposures that you're going to get into it in your life. This is sort of public speaking one-on-one. And we need to master, if you want to be a master, an effective public speaker, this is one of the things that you're going to have to go through. So we'll just go through a few pointers on how to create a successful oral book report, how to be able to present it, where to present it, so forth and so on. And your teacher has probably given you some basic requirements, as in when you're to present your book report, how long is it supposed to, do you have 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and in front of whom, what your audience is going to be. Chances are, if it's a standard oral book report, it'll be about 5 minutes long. You'll be doing it in your classroom that you're familiar with, in front of people that you're familiar with. So let's go ahead and get started on some of these things. First thing, you got to know your stuff. All right? In other words, read the book. Okay? Don't cheat. Don't go. If you're doing an oral book report on Diary of a Wimpy Kid, do not go and look at the movie and then try to make a report off of that. It's not going to happen. All right? Your teachers might have been born at night, but it wasn't last night. They're not going to go for that sort of stuff. Don't go read Cliff Notes about the book, or nowadays you can go on the internet and you can download a summary. You can Google summary of Diary of a Wimpy Kid and read that. Well, listen, your teachers are going to figure out whether you're fudging on this or not. And chances are, if you're reading a popular book like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, you're going to get busted by your classmates as well. All right? But see, that's the thing. Your teachers aren't expecting you to be an expert on this book. They do expect you to read it. They do expect you to understand it and be able to effectively report on it. But they don't expect you to be an expert on it. What they're looking for is they're looking for an authority. That's what they're looking for. They don't expect you to know the topic as well as the author. Otherwise, you would have written the book, not them. But they do expect you to be an authority on the subject. You know more. And this is a comforting thing. You're not expected to be perfect with this, but you are expected to know enough that you can effectively report about this book to your classmates, to the teacher. And so, of course, the most important thing behind that is to read the book. There's no better authority on the book than the author itself and the book itself, so read the book. You also want to know some of the, in terms of knowing your stuff, know the key elements about the book. What is it trying to say? What is the what's the story here? And you want to know some basic things, of course. In your book report, you're going to be covering the author and the publisher and the summary of the elements and themes that are in that. But you really want to know the key elements of that, whether this is a fiction or nonfiction book. There are things that the author is trying to convey to his audience who reads them. And so very often there is a story behind the story. And this is going to help you relate to your audience as well, especially for those of you that get real nervous in front of people when you're doing oral presentations. For some people, this is like pulling teeth. This is like going to the dentist or something like that. I personally have never related to that because I kind of like being up in front of people. But for a lot of people, they get real nervous with this. They get real concerned about it. Well, the more you prepare, the less nervous you're going to be, because the more of an authority you're going to be in this subject. But there's usually a story behind the story. Even if it's something like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, there's lessons that can be taught by reading that story. And that's what a good book does. It brings you in, it paints a picture for you, but it relates to you somehow. And that's where you really want to be. Again, for some of you, 5 minutes might seem like forever, but it's really not. I mean, it took a lot longer to read the book than 5 minutes, hopefully. It took a lot longer to write the book than 5 minutes. So summarizing effectively and efficiently is not going to be an easy task here. You don't want to do too much because you only have 5 minutes. and you don't want to do too little because you don't want to be left with 3.5 minutes after you do your presentation. But again, the more you know your stuff, the better off you're going to be, the more prepared you're going to be. Another thing is know your audience. Now, for most of you doing an oral book report, this means that you're going to be doing it in front of your classmates that you've seen all the time, in a setting, your classroom setting that you're very familiar with. So you've got some advantages as far as that's concerned. You probably already know who they are. Who are these people? You probably also know whether they have some foreknowledge on the book. Again, like and it depends. If your teacher is giving you a choice of, let's say, 15 books. There's 20, 25 kids in your class, and you've got a choice of 15 books, all right? Chances are you're probably not going to be the only one that reports on this book. So there are going to be other people who are going to be authorities on this book. And again, if it's something popular like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, chances are a lot of them have read it, or they've gone to the movie, or whatever the case may be. Well, know your audience before you go into this so you know exactly how you can be prepared for it. Then again, your teacher might also just assign everybody a different book. You might be the only authority on it, all right? That's not licensed to cheat. That's not licensed to lay up. Because again, chances are your teacher has read all these books and he or she knows exactly what they're talking about too. But again, you want to sort of know where your audience is and how you can relate to your audience as well. How can you relate the story of the book to them, either personally or through anecdotal relationships, things like that? How can you report on this so that it is interesting to other people as well? Because that's, of course, that's one thing that you definitely want to do. You want to make sure that when you're reporting this, you've captured their attention. Even if it's a book that you might not particularly like, you want to be able to convey what the book is trying to say, what the storyline is, where the setting is, paint a little picture for them. That's what a successful public speaker does. Next thing you need to know is you need to know your own outline. First of all, just like if you were writing a written report, there's probably 3 parts to a written report. There's probably an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Well, the same thing when giving a speech, is that you want to have an introduction and you want to ask some of the things like, convey some of the things like what the title of the book, the author, the publisher, when it was published, some of the basic things about the book, and put this in your introduction. And this is sort of clinical. It's a very sort of just a formality. But you also might want to start with an attention grabber or something like that, a little joke or a little anecdote, how it relates to you, or how maybe the subject, again, the story behind the story, how does that relate to them? Well, if you put that up there right at the beginning, you've captured their attention. You've got a hook. Now you've got a willing audience that's willing to say, okay, I want to listen to what this guy or what this girl has to say to me and how this book is. That's the way you want to do it. Of course, there's a body section to this as well. This is where most of the information is going to be presented to your audience, and things like the key elements of the story, where it is, what time period it is. Again, you're sort of painting a picture in the minds of your audience of what this book is all about. And we'll get into a second about how you can enhance those pictures with visual aids and everything like that. But really, it is your speaking skills that's going to either paint the picture or not paint the picture in your audience's mind. And so you want to make sure that you are covering some of the key elements of the story. You want to cover when it was said, where it was said, some of the other things that are there. And then there, of course, is a conclusion. And then the conclusion, what you want to do is you want to go back to those recurring themes. You want to go, this is where you address the story behind the story. Take something like Animal Farm, all right? Animal Farm's pretty heavy lifting for a lot of us because it's allegorical. There's a definite story behind that story. The story is not about a whole bunch of animals that take over a farm and kick all the human beings out, and then later on start acting like the human beings. That's the story, but what is it behind them? What is the symbolism behind it? And be able to know your book enough and to make a value judgment on this. Is this a book that you would recommend to other people reading? Is it a book that you would say, okay, if you just want, some light reading, this might not be a good book for you. But if you want something you can really sort of sink your teeth in, then this might be something that you want to get. You know, at the end, you give your opinion. You got to be careful about this. And say, I didn't like it; it was boring, or anything like that. Again, you want to be. You don't have to be sold on every book that you read. That's not human nature. There's going to be plenty of things that you read and you just, I don't think I'd crack that book back open again. But you want to give some sound reasons why or why not you would give that advice to other people. And you know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words? Well, help yourself out with this. Depending on what the requirements are for this particular report, you might have to do visual aids, or it might be the teacher might just give it up to your discretion. Well, I'd go ahead and use them. If your teacher has like this little guy right here has an easel or something like that, something that you can put some things up on there, why not? And make sure that you give them something to maybe plant that seed. Again, what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to get that picture in their minds, and then let their minds. That's the nice thing about it, is their minds can work on the imagination. And if you could download everybody's thoughts, they would be slightly different. But you might want to have a couple of visual aids in order to sort of get them started with that. Look through your outline and see where might be a good time to introduce a picture, or a photocopy of the jacket, maybe a picture of the author. That might not be a bad idea. Pictures of the setting. If it's a book that's about turn of the century, and we're talking 1900, thank you very much, turn of the century, but it's 1900s rural Massachusetts or something like that. You don't have to go ahead and get an absolute, photograph that's stamped in authenticity of that, but maybe something that sort of paints a little picture for them. That's an opportunity to really sort of get that seed into their minds. And now you've already gotten them kick-started into what the characters represent. You might want to also, along with the book and the picture of the authors and the settings, you might want to have main characters. And there are many books that have very, very, very good illustrations with them too. Don't be afraid to use those as well. All right, so you do want to use a little bit of visual presentation with you to help out that.